Are you struggling to understand German native speakers? Do you find it difficult to follow a conversation when people are speaking really fast? Well, you're not alone. Like with many other languages, German native speakers drop syllables or even put multiple words together into one. That leaves German learners often frustrated because you put so much time and effort into learning a language, but then you realize that people speak very differently in real life. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you common patterns of fast spoken German so you can finally understand German native speakers. If we haven't met yet, hallo und herzlich willkommen. My name is Salome. I'm a German native teacher currently based in Stuttgart, and on this channel, Speak Fluent German, I teach practical daily life German in plain English. So if that is something you're interested in, then make sure to subscribe for more weekly lessons. I've also dedicated myself to helping expats and professionals who want to relocate to the German-speaking countries to go from absolutely zero knowledge all the way up to becoming conversational, and I do that through my signature program, the German Fluency Academy. I have a 60-minute free taster lesson linked below in the description box that you can check out if you're interested in joining our community and learning more from me. Now, without further ado, let's dive into today's lesson. First of all, let's talk about contractions. When trying to decode fast spoken German, you'll need to first of all understand what contractions are and how to decode them. So contractions are basically shortened forms of words or phrases which are made by leaving out some letters or sounds. Zum Beispiel, for example, instead of saying Ich möchte einen Kaffee, you'll hear native speakers drop certain sounds so that the sentence becomes Ich möchte einen Kaffee. Or instead of Hast du schon die E-Mail gelesen, you'd say Hast du schon die Mail gelesen? Or when asking someone how they are doing, you'd say instead of Wie geht es dir? Wie geht's dir? Or instead of Guck mal, like look, guck mal. So words and phrases are basically mushed together, and that makes it really difficult to understand sometimes what is actually being said. But there is a good news. There are certain contractions that are used all the time in German that we are going to take a look at together. So it's definitely worth making the effort to learn these patterns so that you have an easier time understanding people. One of the most common patterns is dropping the E at the end of words, especially in the verb ending for the first person singular, which is I, also ich. Zum Beispiel, ich lerne Deutsch becomes ich lerne Deutsch. Or ich spreche Englisch becomes ich spreche Englisch. So instead of lerne and spreche, I just say lern and sprech. How would you say the following phrase after applying what we've just learned? Ich komme aus den USA. Genau, ich komme aus den USA. The next very common pattern when speaking fast is combining the verb with du. Du is the informal you in German. So basically, when the verb comes first and it is followed by du, it melds together to one word. This pattern typically appears in question sentences. Why is that? Because in question sentences, the verb always stands in front of the subject. So in German, we have two types of questions. A question with a question word, like how, what, why, etc. For those, the sentence structure would be the question word, the verb, the subject, and then the rest of the sentence. Like for example, wann kommst du nach Hause? The second type of question is a yes or no question. In this case, the sentence doesn't have a question word and the sentence structure simply starts with the verb, plus the subject, and then plus the rest of the sentence. Like for example, kommst du 17 Uhr nach Hause? Ja oder nein? So very often with these kinds of sentences, the verb melds together with du and gets the st ending instead of just an st. So let's take a look at the previous examples. Wann kommst du nach Hause would then become Wann kommst du nach Hause? Or kommst du 17 Uhr nach Hause would become Kommst du 17 Uhr nach Hause? So kommst du becomes kommst du. Let's take a look at a few more examples where this pattern applies. Was hast du denn? Was hast du denn? Was brauchst du? What do you need? Was brauchst du? Kommst du mit? Are you joining? Are you coming? Kommst du mit? Hast du Lust? Do you feel like it? Hast du Lust? Magst du ins Kino gehen? Do you want to go to the cinema? Magst du ins Kino gehen? Speaking of verb endings, Germans also don't pronounce the E in words ending in en. Like for example, wir sprechen becomes wir sprechen. Sprechen. Wir haben would become wir haben. Or in some regions, you oftentimes hear people even say wir haben instead of wir haben. Let's take a look at a few more examples. Wir sprechen Deutsch. Wir kommen aus Kanada. Wir haben nette Nachbarn. This phenomenon also happens with the past participles in German. Like for example, instead of saying, hast du die E-Mail gelesen? I would say, hast du die Mail gelesen? Or instead of saying, wann bist du nach Hause gefahren? Wann bist du nach Haus gefahren? Another phenomenon that happens in colloquial German is that we drop the ei in the indefinite article. The indefinite article in German is ein or eine and all variations of it depending on the case that applies. The English equivalent is simply a or n. So how does that look like? Basically, ein becomes n, eine becomes ne, einen becomes nen, and einem becomes nem. Let's take a look at a few practical examples. Zum Beispiel, ich hätte gern ein Bier. So ein Bier becomes ein Bier. Also, ich hätte gern ein Bier. Or ich nehme eine Suppe. I'll take a soup. Ich nehme eine Suppe. Or ich möchte einen Kaffee. I would like a coffee. Einen Kaffee becomes nen Kaffee. Also, ich möchte nen Kaffee. Alles klar? Here's another question for you. How would the following sentence look like when applying what we have just learned? Ich hätte gern einen Cappuccino. Genau, ich hätte gern nen Cappuccino. Another very common pattern is combining articles with prepositions. By the way, if you're not there yet with understanding all these different terminologies like verbs, articles, prepositions, and so on, I highly recommend checking out my free training for beginners. We start with the complete basics and German pronunciation, basic grammar, and a lot more. The link to register is in the description box below, and I would love to see you in class. Alright, so native speakers often combine prepositions with the definite articles that follow them. For example, auf plus dem becomes aufm. Like in this sentence, ich bin auf dem Weg. I'm on my way. Spoken in natural speed German, it would be ich bin auf dem Weg. Or für plus das becomes fürs. Or für plus ein becomes führen. Zum Beispiel, das ist für das Geburtstagskind. Das ist fürs Geburtstagskind. Or, was ist das für ein Auto? Was ist das für ein Auto? Another example is mit plus dem, which simply becomes mit'm. Mit'm. Kommst du mit dem Auto? Kommst du mit dem Auto? There are many more examples like these where the prepositions get mushed together with the articles. I think what's important is not necessarily memorizing all of these patterns for each and every preposition and the article, but to have that in the back of your mind. So when you hear native speakers, you're able to recognize that pattern and then break it down for yourself so you understand what is actually being said. The next two patterns that I want to dive into are not super difficult. It's basically just the shortening of the words es and ist. So let's take a look at es first. When es follows a verb, it oftentimes just simply gets attached to that verb in front of it and becomes an s. And the e isn't pronounced. Like for example in the phrase, wie geht es dir? It simply becomes, wie geht's dir? Or, mach es gut, mach's gut. Ich habe es, ich hab's, which means kind of like, I got it. With ist, it's even easier to remember because in fast-spoken German, it's pronounced like the English is, so without the T. Not too difficult, right? Zum Beispiel, wie ist das Wetter? Wie ist das Wetter? How's the weather? Wie ist es in Berlin? Wie ist es in Berlin? Here the words ist and es are even spoken so fast that it becomes one word. So instead of saying ist es, we would say is es. When speaking about colloquial German, we also need to take a look at modal particles. Modal particles are little words in German that don't really have a meaning. They just add a layer of emotion or nuance to a sentence, like making it sound friendlier or more demanding or whatever it is. It really depends on the modal particle that you're using. I made a whole in-depth video about the most common modal particles in German here that you can check out next. The most common ones include mal and denn, and these are often shortened in a sentence. So mal is often used in a request to make it sound friendlier. And in fast-spoken German, mal becomes ma. Like for example, kannst du mir mal helfen? Kannst du mir mal helfen? So can you help me please? Kannst du mal bitte die Tür aufmachen? Kannst du mal bitte die Tür aufmachen? Can you please open the door? Denn is also used to make a question sound a bit nicer, or sometimes it also emphasizes the emotion of a sentence. Like for example here in this question. Was ist denn hier passiert? What happened here? Adding denn makes the question sound even more surprised. And when it's spoken fast, denn simply becomes an N. Was ist denn hier passiert? Or for example, in this question, denn makes it sound friendlier. Was machst du denn heute? What are you doing today? When spoken fast, it becomes Was machst denn du heute? So those were some of the common patterns that German natives apply when speaking fast that make it so difficult to understand them. But now that you have learned about these, you'll be able to spot them and find out which words were put together or which words have been left out so that you'll be able to piece together the puzzle in no time. Next, you can put your knowledge to the test. We're going to take a look at a short text that I'm first going to read out in textbook German and then in colloquial German after applying everything that we have learned today. This text is a message from Kim to her friend Anna. So Kim has just moved to Berlin and is telling Anna about her first month in the new city. Let's take a look. Hallo Anna, ich bin jetzt seit einem Monat in Berlin. Es ist sehr schön hier. Meine Arbeit macht Spaß und mein Team ist sehr nett. Wenn ich mal Zeit habe, gehe ich in die Stadt. Dort gibt es viele Parks. Am Abend treffe ich Freunde und wir gehen etwas essen. Ich hoffe, dir geht es gut. Was gibt es denn bei dir Neues? Wir können ja mal telefonieren. Melde dich mal. Ich freue mich, von dir zu hören. Mach es gut. Kim. PS, sag mal, hast du was von Sabine gehört? Now let's take a look at the same message again, but this time in fast-spoken German. Hallo Anna, ich bin jetzt seit einem Monat in Berlin. Es ist sehr schön hier. Meine Arbeit macht Spaß und mein Team ist sehr nett. Wenn ich mal Zeit habe, gehe ich in die Stadt. Dort gibt's viele Parks. Am Abend treffe ich Freunde und wir gehen was essen. Ich hoffe, dir geht's gut. Was gibt's denn bei dir Neues? Wir können ja mal telefonieren. Meld dich mal. Ich freue mich, von dir zu hören. Mach's gut, Kim. PS, sag mal, hast du was von Sabine gehört? Were you able to spot the differences? Let me know in the comments below how you're doing with fast-spoken German, and I'm curious to know which key takeaways you got from this video. I hope you have found today's lesson helpful. If so, make sure to leave a like if you haven't already, and I'll be back next week with another lesson for you guys. Das ist alles für heute. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!